I should have been the happiest man in Georgia on the day I won the lottery. Instead, it became the day my world fell apart. It was a sweltering July afternoon in Atlanta, and a $100 million winning ticket with my name on it was tucked in my wallet. My hands were still shaking with disbelief and excitement as I pulled into my driveway, ready to surprise my wife, Emily, with the life-changing news. I imagined her reaction 1,000 times during the drive home. Tears of joy, laughter, maybe even a celebratory dance in our kitchen. We'd talk about paying off the mortgage, taking that trip to Italy we always dreamed about, and securing our future together. But fate had other plans for that day. As I stepped through the front door, grin plastered on my face and adrenaline still coursing through me, I noticed something was off. The house was unusually quiet, save for the faint hum of the air conditioner. "Emily?" I called out, expecting her to appear from around the corner. No answer. A strange intuition prickled the back of my neck. I took a few steps into the living room. The late afternoon sun cast long rectangles of light on the hardwood floor. I saw one of the couch cushions lay on the floor, and 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table, one still with red wine dregs. My stomach lurched. We weren't expecting company. This looked intimate, secretive. I set my briefcase and keys down soundlessly and moved further in. A throw blanket was draped messily over the couch, trailing to the ground, as if someone had hastily untangled themselves from it. My pulse quickened. I could hear my own breathing, shallow and uneasy. A muffled thump came from down the hallway, our bedroom. I froze. That wasn't the sound of an appliance or the house settling. It was deliberate, a quick movement. My heart pounding, I crept down the hall. The bedroom door was slightly ajar. Through the sliver, I could see the edge of the dresser, part of the bed, and shadows moving. Then I heard it. A breathy, feminine laugh that sent ice through my veins. It was Emily's laugh, soft, playful, and unmistakably coming from our bedroom. I pushed the door open. Time seemed to slow to a crawl, every detail searing into my mind. The first thing I recognized was Emily's dark brown hair fanned across my pillow. Emily, my wife of 7 years, was tangled up in our sheets with a man who was definitely not me. They were partially covered by the rumpled white cotton, but there was no mistaking what I saw. Bare limbs entwined, her shoulders exposed, their bodies pressed together. She wasn't just cheating on me. She was doing it in our marital bed. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I stood there in the doorway, utterly frozen. It felt like I'd stepped into someone else's nightmare. Emily's eyes were closed. Her face flushed in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. Certainly not with me. And the man... God, I recognized him. It was Kevin, one of our close friends. Kevin, who had shared beers with me on the back deck, who had sat at our table for holidays and joked with us. Kevin, who played doubles tennis with us on weekends. And here he was, half naked in my bed with my wife. A sound finally escaped my throat, a guttural mix between a gasp and a growl. My hand, white-knuckled on the doorknob, pushed the door open wider, and it banged against the doorstop. The 2 adulterers jolted apart in alarm. Emily's eyes snapped open and met mine. In an instant, her expression morphed from confusion to utter horror. "Jack!" she squeaked, scrambling to yank the sheet up over her chest. Beside her, Kevin cursed under his breath and nearly fell off the bed in his panic, grabbing at the tangle of clothes on the floor. For a moment, none of us moved. My heart was thundering so hard I could feel it in my ears. I'm not sure what showed on my face: shock, betrayal, blind rage. maybe all of it. Emily's lips parted, trembling, as if to speak, but no sound came out. Kevin fumbled his way into his jeans, hands shaking, not even bothering with his shirt yet. He was the first to break the silence. "Jack, man, I can explain," he stammered, avoiding my eyes as he awkwardly tried to do up his zipper. A bark of laughter, harsh and humorless, burst out of me. "Explain?" I hissed. "Explain what exactly? Because it sure looks like you were screwing my wife in my bed." "It's not what it looks like," Kevin blurted, palms raised as though warding off a blow. "Not what it—" I started, incredulous. Words failed me. I had never felt such pure, white-hot rage. My hands were trembling at my sides. I had an overwhelming urge to lunge across the room and wipe that terrified, guilty look off his face with my fist. A red haze of fury nearly pushed me to knock his teeth out then and there. My fists clenched, itching for violence. But a cold voice in the back of my mind stopped me. Hitting him would only complicate matters. Police, an assault charge, none of which would help me in the long run. I needed to keep control. Emily found her voice next, high-pitched and cracking. "Jack, I'm sorry," she babbled, clutching the sheet to her body. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant for you to find out." That pathetic admission ignited something in me. Never meant for you to find out. So it would have been fine to betray me, as long as I stayed in the dark? My jaw tightened. "Get out," I said lowly, cutting off whatever other nonsense she was spewing. Kevin had frozen in place, shirt still off, his sneakers dangling from one hand. He looked at Emily, then at me. "Jack, please." "Get out of my house!" I roared this time, my voice echoing off the walls. The dam of my restraint was starting to crack. If he didn't get out now, I really might kill him with my bare hands. Kevin didn't need telling a third time. He shoved his feet into his shoes and bolted around the bed, keeping a wide berth from me. As he passed, I instinctively stepped forward. He flinched like I'd swung at him, nearly tripping over his half-fastened pants in his scramble to escape. He mumbled something that might have been, "I'm sorry," or "Please don't hurt me," as he rushed by. A second later, I heard the front door slam. He was gone. Only Emily and I remained, facing each other from opposite sides of the bedroom. The scene of her betrayal still all around us. The rumpled sheets on the bed. The smell of sweat and perfume in the air. Her robe tossed carelessly on the chair. She stood by the bed, sheet wrapped around her, one hand clenching it to her chest. Tears were spilling down her cheeks now. "Jack," she whispered. She took a step toward me. I couldn't bear it. I recoiled, raising a hand in a warding gesture. "Don't touch me," I managed to say, my voice thick with pain. I took a step back toward the door. "Just don't. I can't even look at you right now." She stopped, shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying through quiet sobs. "I never wanted to hurt you. I cut her off, voice cold and hollow. "You've been hurting me for who knows how long, Em. You just didn't want to get caught." My use of her nickname, spoken with such bitterness, made her flinch. She opened her mouth, but I was done listening. The initial shock was giving way to an icy clarity. This marriage, our marriage, was over. Something precious had died in this room today, and something new was born in me. A dark, focused resolve. I turned on my heel and left the bedroom. Behind me, Emily let out a broken cry. She trailed after me into the hallway, still clutching the sheet to her front. "Jack, please, we need to talk about this," she wailed. "It just happened. It was a mistake, please. If you'll let me explain." Her words fell on deaf ears. My body was moving on autopilot. I snatched my car keys from the entry table. My briefcase still sat by the couch, but I left it. I couldn't care less about it right now. As I reached the front door, I paused and spoke without turning to look at her. "Don't call me. Don't come after me. We'll deal with this later." My tone was flat, devoid of emotion, though inside, I was anything but calm. I walked out and slammed the door behind me, cutting off the sound of her sobbing. The hot, humid air outside hit me like a wall, but I barely registered it. I fumbled with the car door, got inside, and gunned the engine. As I tore out of our driveway, my vision blurred with tears that demanded to be released. I glanced at the rearview mirror and saw a stranger's face, my face contorted in anguish, eyes wild and red-rimmed. I drove aimlessly for a few minutes, choking back the tide of emotion, until it became too much to contain. I pulled over at a quiet park a few miles away and threw the car into park. I barely had time to turn off the engine before the sobs came. A raw, guttural sound tore out of me as I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel. Hot tears blurred my vision while I shouted into the empty car. "Why? How could you do this to me?" All the dreams I'd had even an hour earlier were ashes now. I cried until I had nothing left. Eventually, my practical side started to surface, cutting through the haze of hurt. I wiped my face on my sleeve, though the tears had mostly stopped on their own, leaving me drained. The initial shock was ebbing, and in its wake anger swelled to take its place. Cold, seething anger that sat in my gut like a block of ice. I thought of the winning lottery ticket still in my wallet. A ticket I had been so eager to share with Emily, the woman I loved and trusted beyond measure. A bitter, almost mocking thought crossed my mind. If I hadn't come home early, if I hadn't discovered them, would she have ever told me about the affair? Or would she have smiled and celebrated the millions with me, all the while slipping off to be with Kevin whenever my back was turned? The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, and the presence of that lottery ticket turned everything on its head. We had just come into unimaginable wealth, but now our marriage was in ruins. With trembling fingers, I dialed his number. Mark answered on the second ring. His voice went from cheerful to concerned the instant he realized I was in distress. I told him everything, finding Emily and Kevin, the fight, me leaving. By the end, I was shaking again, but Mark's steady presence on the line grounded me. "Jack, I'm so sorry," he said earnestly. "Listen, you need to protect yourself now. This is going to be a battle." He advised me to gather any evidence of the affair I could find, texts, emails, photos, before confronting her again or making any decisions. He also insisted I not tell Emily about the lottery windfall. "Don't give her any reason to stake a claim to it," he warned, "not until you talk to a divorce attorney." A divorce attorney. The words hit me hard, but I knew he was right. There was no coming back from this betrayal. "I'll find you the best family lawyer in Atlanta," Mark continued. "We'll make sure she doesn't get a cent more than she deserves. You might have to play it cool for a bit, but we'll get everything lined up." I murmured my agreement. Mark was already shifting into Big Brother problem-solving mode, talking about getting a private investigator if needed, securing our joint bank accounts, and planning for a tough legal fight. It was a lot to take in, but I felt gratitude that I didn't have to go through this alone. "And Jack," Mark added gently, "don't go back home tonight. Come stay with me or get a hotel. Just give yourself space." "I will," I said. I glanced at the darkening sky through the windshield. The thought of stepping back into that house made my skin crawl. I'll check into a hotel for now. I just can't face her. I understand, he replied. Text me where you land. Try to rest if you can. Tomorrow we start dealing with this, one step at a time. By the time we hung up, my tears had dried, replaced by a cold determination. Mark was right. This was war, and I needed to be prepared. I started the car and pulled out of the park with a new sense of purpose. As I drove, I spotted a strip mall up ahead, where I knew there was an electronics store. On a grim impulse, I pulled in. If I was going to wage a strategic war against Emily's treachery, I would need supplies. Inside the bright, fluorescent-lit aisles, I quickly found what I was looking for. A voice-activated digital recorder and a pair of tiny Wi-Fi cameras that could be easily concealed. It felt surreal, buying spy gear to surveil my own wife, but trust had completely evaporated from my world. I had to gather evidence, real, solid evidence, of what she had done and whatever she might do next. Leaving the store, I realized how eerily calm I felt. The grief and shock were now tempered by an intense focus. My hands didn't tremble as I paid for the gadgets. My heartbeat was steady. It was as if the emotional storm had given way to a cold, clear sky, revealing a path forward. By the time I checked into a nondescript hotel off I-75 under an alias, I had the outline of a plan in my head. In the quiet of the room, I sat at the little desk, took out the hotel notepad, and began writing a list of actions. Asterisk, secure legal counsel. Mark will arrange this tomorrow. Asterisk, gather evidence of the affair. Photos, texts, emails, PI if necessary. Asterisk, protect the lottery ticket and winnings. Keep it secret. Possibly claim through a trust or anonymously if possible once legal counsel advises. Asterisk, financially isolate Emily. Move half of our joint funds to a separate account she can't access. Freeze credit cards if needed. Prevent her from draining anything when she realizes what's coming. Asterisk, expose Kevin's betrayal. Inform his wife discreetly at the right time. She deserves to know, and it will hit him where it hurts. Asterisk, plan the confrontation. When and where to drop the hammer, perhaps in court or a public setting for maximum impact. Asterisk, media strategy. Consider leaking the story once the dust settles. A betrayed lottery winner narrative could ruin them socially. I set the pen down and read over the list. It was more than a to-do list. It was a roadmap for revenge. A precise, ruthless revenge that they would never see coming. In my mind's eye, I pictured Emily's tear-streaked face when I left, and Kevin's craven flinch as I advanced on him. They were afraid of what I might do in the heat of the moment. But they had no idea. I had no idea until now what I was capable of. They would learn. I didn't sleep much that night. How could I? My world had been upended, but I drifted in and out of fitful rest, clutching at the one thing that gave me solace, the certainty that I would make them pay dearly for what they'd done. The next morning, I woke with a pounding headache and a grim sense of purpose. Sunlight slanted in through the gap in the heavy hotel curtains. For a moment, I stared at the unfamiliar ceiling, my heart heavy. Then the memories of yesterday came flooding back with nauseating clarity. I had caught my wife cheating. I was a newly minted millionaire, and yet I felt like the poorest man alive. No, focus. I pushed myself out of bed. There was a lot to do. I checked my phone. Multiple new messages from Emily lit up the screen, along with a few from mutual friends, no doubt prompted by her. I ignored the friends and opened Emily's texts. They ranged from pleading, "Please, Jack, let's talk. I'm so sorry. I love you," to panicked, "Where are you? I'm scared. Please answer. To defensive. We're married. We can't just throw it away over this. We both made mistakes. She was all over the map, apologizing 1 minute, trying to justify or minimize the next. I felt a surge of anger reading her barrage of messages. Mistakes. Plural. As if I had done anything remotely comparable to her betrayal. I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her one curt text. I need space. I'm safe. Don't call me. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. I just need time to process. It wasn't exactly truthful. I had no intention of heartfelt talks. But it would keep her off balance and hopefully prevent her from taking drastic action, like emptying accounts or destroying evidence. Let her sit with her guilt and uncertainty. Almost immediately, 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing a reply, but I muted the conversation and put the phone down. I didn't want to read whatever she said. A text from Mark came through next. He had set up a meeting for me at 10 a.m. with a highly recommended divorce attorney named Victor Haskell. I'll be there with you. We got this, Mark's message concluded. I managed a thin smile. He really was pulling through for me. By 9:45, I was in downtown Atlanta, riding an elevator up to the law offices of Haskell and Associates. I felt a little numb as I stepped out into the polished lobby. Mark was already there waiting. He gave my shoulder a firm squeeze. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be," I replied quietly. Victor Haskell ushered us into a conference room. He was a tall, silver-haired man in his 50s, with a reputation for being one of the most aggressive divorce lawyers in the city. He greeted me with a reassuringly firm handshake. "Mark's filled me in on the basics," he said as we sat down. "I'm sorry you're going through this. Let's discuss how we'll handle it." So I recounted, in a calmer, more clinical way, the events of the previous day, from walking in on them to leaving the house. It almost felt like I was talking about someone else's life. Victor listened intently, occasionally asking a question about dates or details. I showed him a couple of the photos I'd snapped on my phone of the wine glasses and the state of the bedroom. After I'd left yesterday, I realized I'd taken no pictures of them in the act, but I did take a few shots of the scene. 2 wine glasses, the messed up bed with the telltale evidence of what had happened. When I explained about the lottery ticket, how I hadn't told Emily, and how bizarrely timed the whole thing was, Victor's eyebrows rose. "That certainly ups the stakes," he said. "We'll need to handle that asset very carefully." He steepled his fingers on the table. "All right, here's the situation. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. Generally, assets acquired during the marriage, like a lottery windfall, are considered marital property claibornefirm.com. However, because we have clear evidence of adultery, the court can favor you heavily in the division claibornefirm.com. Also, if adultery is proven, your wife will be barred from receiving alimony claibornefirm.com. You essentially hold the winning cards here as long as we present a solid case." I nodded, absorbing that. It was in line with what I remembered, and what Mark had told me. "So you recommend filing on grounds of adultery?" I said. "Absolutely," Victor replied without hesitation. "It's one of the at-fault grounds in Georgia and a powerful one in your scenario. We want to establish a record of her wrongdoing. Now, you mentioned you caught them in the act, but didn't take photos of them. Do you have any other evidence? Suspicious emails, texts, anything?" "Not yet," I admitted, "but I plan to get some. I left the house, so I don't have access to her phone right now, but I did pick up a voice recorder and some small cameras." I glanced at Mark, who gave me a subtle nod of encouragement. "I was thinking of gathering what evidence I can before she realizes I'm doing it." Also, I'm considering hiring a private investigator to follow her, in case she tries to meet him again, or if there's more to uncover. Victor offered a thin, approving smile. Smart. The more evidence, the better. Text messages, emails, photographs of them entering hotels or meeting up. Anything that corroborates the affair will pressure her to settle on our terms. We can also subpoena records and so forth. But that takes time. If you can get access to her devices and accounts, do it now, before she suspects a thing. She might not be on guard yet, I said. When I left, I told her I needed time. She might believe I'm just cooling off, not plotting a legal offensive. Use that to your advantage, Victor said. Strike fast. We can have a divorce complaint prepared today and file immediately. It will catch her completely off guard. I took a deep breath. This was really happening, and fast. But that was good. I wanted this in motion before I lost my nerve or she found hers. All right, let's do it, I agreed. We spent the next hour going over financials and strategy. I handed over account statements, property deeds, anything he might need to map out our assets. We discussed the lottery at length. Technically, the draw had already happened while we were married, but I hadn't claimed the prize yet. Victor suggested we file for divorce before I claim it. We'll argue that due to her adultery, she shouldn't benefit from that prize at all, he explained. And since Georgia allows winners to remain anonymous over $250,000 galottery.com, you can claim it via a trust quietly. We'll still have to disclose it in court, but if she agrees to our settlement, the specifics might remain private. He also advised me to immediately secure our joint bank accounts. Move what you can into an account in your name. You've done some of that already? Good. I'll file a motion for an injunction if needed to keep her from dissipating assets once she's served. Before we concluded, Victor asked gently, "One more thing. Are you sure you want to go the scorched earth route? Sometimes in the heat of betrayal, people want total destruction, but it can be a long, painful process. There's mediation, possibly a trial. Given the publicity a lottery can bring, it could become public. Are you prepared for that?" I met his gaze. "She's the one who should be worried about people finding out, not me," I said firmly. "I'm prepared. I don't care if people know. In fact," I found myself nearly growling, "I want them to know what she did. I'm not inclined to protect her reputation after what she's done to me." Mark put a hand on my back. "We're not giving them an inch, Vic," he said to the attorney. "Jack wants to pursue this to the full extent." Victor nodded. "Understood. Just remember, if at any point you want to settle quietly, that option is available. But we'll proceed as you wish, with precision and aggression." I left that meeting feeling more resolute than I had since this ordeal began. Before I headed out, Victor told me he'd have the paperwork ready to file by the next morning at the latest, and that as soon as it was filed, a process server could serve Emily the same day. I gave him the address of her real estate office for serving. I had no qualms about a bit of public embarrassment for her. Mark had to get to his own office, so we parted ways. I thanked him profusely for his help, and he gave me another solid hug and told me to call if I needed anything. Rather than go straight back to the hotel, I decided it was time to put the next part of my plan into action. Gathering evidence. I drove toward our neighborhood, timing it around lunch when I hoped Emily might be out. Parking a few houses down, I approached my home warily. My home. It didn't feel like home now, did it? More like a stage where I'd witnessed the cruelest betrayal of my life. I let myself in as quietly as possible. "Emily?" I called softly. No answer. Stepping inside, I noticed some of the mess from yesterday had been tidied. The wine glasses were gone from the living room. The blanket was folded. She'd been here cleaning up the scene of the crime, it seemed. Moving quickly, I headed to our bedroom first. The bed was made with fresh sheets. She must have changed them. The sheer normalcy of that act made my chest tighten with anger. On her nightstand, I spotted her phone charger, but no phone. She likely had her primary phone with her. But I remembered the possibility of a second phone, a burner. I began searching through her dresser and nightstand drawers methodically. Bingo. In the back of her nightstand, beneath some books, was a cheap flip phone. My heart pounding, I flipped it open. It was still charged and had no password. I navigated to the text messages and felt a fresh wave of fury as I saw an entire log of exchanges with a contact labeled simply K. The texts were explicit. They professed love for each other, discussed meetup times, and even mocked mundane interactions with me. One from her said, "I hate lying to him, but I can't give you up." My vision blurred at that, but I kept scrolling, snapping photos of the worst messages with my own phone. Then I hit a recent string from just 2 days ago that made my blood run cold. Asterisk Emily to K. He hasn't claimed the ticket yet, but I'll bring it up when things are calm. Asterisk Kevin reply. Good. We need that money for our future. I had to read it twice. They were talking about my lottery ticket. Kevin knew. They knew I'd won, or at least suspected, and they were planning to make sure they got a share of it for our future. I realized with a sick feeling that at some point after I discovered I'd won, maybe from news of where the winning ticket was sold or some clue, Emily had likely figured it out and told Kevin. They were already plotting around my money before I even had a chance to process the win myself. I snapped a photo of that exchange too, hands trembling with rage. Any lingering doubt I had about unleashing the full force of revenge evaporated. This wasn't just a sordid affair of lust. This was calculated. They had been scheming to take advantage of me. I carefully returned the burner phone to its hiding spot, after forwarding its incriminating texts to my email. Next, I headed to our home office. At the desktop computer, I wiggled the mouse and the screen woke up. Thankfully, it was still logged into her email. I rifled through her inbox and found a folder labeled Receipts that looked innocuous, but inside were a series of email threads with Kevin's personal Gmail. She'd been clever enough to stash them out of the main inbox. The emails spanned almost a year. My stomach churned as I skimmed them. Notes where he called her my love, and she told him she missed him. A hotel reservation confirmation from 6 months ago when I knew I'd been away on business. Even a thank you from Kevin for the wonderful weekend together on a weekend I had thought she was visiting her sister. Lie upon lie upon lie. I copied everything to a flash drive. Every damning email, every attachment, including a photo they'd taken together at some restaurant, both smiling like a happy couple. It was painfully thorough evidence of their long-running betrayal. In the process, I also noticed emails confirming expensive dinners and gifts. It looked like Kevin had given her a gold bracelet, which explained the unfamiliar jewelry I found in her drawer. And she had paid for a couple's spa day for them using our joint credit card. There it was, money from our accounts spent on their affair. I made sure to save those details too. She spent marital funds on him? The courts would love that claibornefirm.com. With the burner phone messages, the emails, and whatever photos I had, I felt I had more than enough to hammer her into the ground legally. My instinct was to confront her with all this right now in a blaze of fury. But I held back. That confrontation would come, but it needed to be on my terms, when it could do the most damage to her plans. I packed a suitcase of essentials for myself: clothes, toiletries, important documents from the office. I didn't plan on living here during the divorce. Let her stew alone in this house full of memories. We'd see if those meant anything to her now. Before leaving, I also hid a tiny Wi-Fi camera on a bookshelf overlooking the living room. If Emily dared bring Kevin into my home again, I intended to have it on record. I slipped out of the house undetected and breathed a sigh of relief as I drove away. It was early afternoon now. I parked at a coffee shop to organize the evidence I'd gathered, sending digital copies to Victor via email with a short note. Found these: proof of affair and spending, hard copies on flash drive. He replied within half an hour, "Excellent work. This gives us a very strong position. Filing first thing tomorrow." Tomorrow. That would be the day everything officially kicked off. The day she'd be served divorce papers citing her adultery in black and white. I wondered how she would react. Panic, surely. Shame, hopefully. That evening in the hotel, I ate a sandwich I didn't taste and tried to watch TV to quiet my mind. My phone buzzed a few times. Once with a call from my parents. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to explain. And several more times with texts from Emily begging me to please come home so we could talk. I ignored them all. Instead, I sat on the bed and carefully reviewed the plan in my head, step by step. My anger burned steady and strong, but now it was a controlled flame. I was going to divorce Emily, and she would be left with nothing but the clothes on her back if I had my way. I was going to ensure Kevin's life blew up too. He shouldn't get to walk away unscathed. By the end of it, they'd both wish they'd never so much as met each other. I slept lightly, waking before dawn on the day we planned to file. Lying there in the gray morning light, I felt a knot of anxiety form. This was the point of no return. Once I unleashed the legal dogs, it would be a brutal, real fight, not just fantasies in my head. Was I truly prepared for it? I thought of Emily's deception, of the image of her smiling at Kevin in that email photo, an image now seared into my memory. I thought of the text about the lottery ticket, how they plotted to use my luck for their future behind my back. Any sympathy I might have had shriveled to nothing. Yes, I was prepared. They had it coming. The following morning broke clear and bright. By 9 a.m., Victor confirmed via phone that the divorce complaint had been filed with the county clerk, officially starting the case. I felt a jolt in my stomach when he said the case number and the title, Jack Carson versus Emily Carson, Petition for Divorce, Adultery. It was really happening. By 10:30, I got word that the process server had served Emily at her real estate office. Apparently, he walked in and handed her the envelope in front of a couple of colleagues. She was caught completely off guard. Victor relayed the scene to me later. She went pale as a ghost, started shaking, and fled the office immediately after being served. The papers not only notified her of the divorce action, but also detailed the evidence of her adultery and our intent to seek an unequal division of assets in my favor. I had to imagine it made for a nasty surprise in the middle of her workday. Not even 15 minutes after that, my phone rang. It was Emily. I let it vibrate a couple times as I steeled myself, then answered. Her voice was small and shaky. "Jack, you filed for divorce? On grounds of adultery?" "Yes," I said flatly. "You did it without even talking to me," she cried. Anguish and disbelief mingled in her tone. I swallowed the bitter surge of anger her words triggered. "What was there to talk about, Emily?" My voice was icy. "You made your choice when you decided to cheat on me." She began sobbing. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, but please, we don't have to do it like this." We could have tried counseling, anything. Jack, I love you. Stop! I cut in, my voice low and furious. Don't you dare say you love me. Loved people don't do what you did. She fell silent, except for her crying. I could picture her, phone pressed to her ear, trembling and tear-streaked. Once, the thought of her in pain would have torn me apart. Now, I felt only a grim satisfaction. Her next words came out in a plea. Please, you're trying to ruin me. The papers say adultery. If this goes to court, everyone will know. My career, my family, I'll be humiliated. Should have considered that before, I replied sharply. Actions have consequences, Emily. Her tone turned desperate, rushing out in one breath. Can't we settle this privately? I'll do anything. You can have whatever you want. Money, the house, just... Please don't drag this out in public. Don't destroy me. Ah, there it was. The self-preservation. The fear. She didn't want the ugly truth aired for all to see. I felt a cold smile curve my lips, though she couldn't see it. You're going to sign whatever agreement I put in front of you, I said. If you do, maybe we keep the details out of the courtroom. But if you fight me on anything, I will scorch the earth. Understand? A shaky inhale on the other end. I understand, she whispered. I'll have my lawyer contact yours, I said stiffly. Do not contact me directly again. And then I hung up on her, cutting off the sound of her soft sobbing. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The call had rattled me, despite my composure. Hearing her voice, her desperation, it tugged at emotions I was trying hard to suppress, but I reminded myself, this woman betrayed you without a second thought. She's crying now because she got caught and stands to lose money and face, not because of genuine remorse for breaking your heart. My phone buzzed again almost immediately. I tensed, thinking it was Emily calling back, but it was just a text notification. I glanced at it. A message from my bank about the joint account I'd partially drained. Possibly she had discovered the missing funds and tried to grab what remained, only to find a withdrawal limit or freeze in place. I smirked grimly. Too late, dear wife. Over the next couple of weeks, the divorce process churned forward in legal motions and mandatory steps. Emily retained an attorney, somebody from a smaller firm. Through back channels, Mark heard that when she told her lawyer about the evidence we had, perhaps in hopes of figuring some defense, the lawyer had bluntly advised her to settle and not let it go to trial. She really had no leverage. Still, the dance had to be done. The court required mediation before a trial date could be set. Claibornefirm.com, so mediation was scheduled about 3 weeks into the case. By then, the initial shock must have worn off Emily, because she entered the mediation room with a mixture of nervousness and resignation. We convened in a neutral conference room. Me and Victor, her and her attorney, with a mediator present. I hadn't seen Emily in person since that awful day. When I walked in and saw her, my chest tightened despite everything. She looked small, defeated. She'd lost weight, her cheeks hollow and eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying constantly. She kept her gaze down, fiddling with a tissue. I wish I could say seeing her like that gave me no feeling, but that would be a lie. This was the woman I'd once planned my life with. Part of me, a very deep, buried part, felt a pang of sympathy. But then I remembered why she was like this. She'd dug her own grave. I steeled myself and sat across the table, not meeting her eyes directly. The mediator went through the introduction about how we were here to reach a mutually agreeable settlement to avoid a trial. Emily's lawyer spoke softly about her willingness to resolve things and mentioned that Emily was remorseful. Victor cut right to the chase. We had a draft settlement ready, He slid it across the table. Emily's attorney read it, her eyebrows arching slightly, then leaned to whisper to Emily. I knew what it said. No alimony, an unequal split of assets heavily in my favor. Essentially, Emily would walk away with only a small fraction of our savings, her own car, and personal property. I would keep the house, the rest of the money, and of course the entirety of the lottery winnings, which, having been claimed in a trust, were technically not even in our joint estate yet, but we listed them to be thorough, with me as sole beneficiary. It was a lopsided deal, arguably punitive, but given what we could prove in court, it was likely not far off from what a judge might order anyway. Claibornefirm.com. If she didn't agree and insisted on fighting, we'd go to trial and air every dirty detail, and she'd possibly end up with even less and a public record of infamy. The smart move for her was to sign. Emily's fingers twisted the tissue in her lap. She finally spoke, voice cracking. This leaves me with almost nothing. Victor responded before I could. Mrs. Carson, considering the circumstances, you're fortunate Mr. Carson is willing to resolve this privately. If we go to trial, I assure you things will only get worse for you, financially and otherwise. Her lawyer gently added, Emily, given the facts, I advise you to accept. I sensed a hint of sympathy from that woman toward her client, but also realism. Emily looked up then, directly at me. Her eyes brimmed with tears. Jack, she said in a trembling voice, I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. I know. But I'm begging you, please don't ruin me completely. I'll agree, just... Can we keep the details quiet? I couldn't bear for everyone to know what I did. I regarded her steadily. Sign the papers, and I have no desire to broadcast anything more than what's needed, I said. It was technically true. I wasn't planning to take out an ad in the paper or anything. The threat of exposure had been a lever, and it worked. A tear rolled down her cheek. She gave a tiny nod. Okay. In that moment, watching her break, I felt a complex swirl of emotions. Triumph, yes. This is the bed she made, and now she had to lie in it. But also a hollow sadness. There was no glee in this for me. It was simply necessary. The mediator went over the points to ensure everyone understood. Emily's lawyer asked for one small modification, that the divorce decree itself not explicitly mention adultery as the cause, to save a bit of face. Victor glanced at me. I paused, then nodded. I didn't need the decree to say it. We all knew what it was for, and I had my evidence if anyone ever questioned it. In mediation records, it could stay among us. With that, Emily initialed and signed in all the places marked. Her hand shook so badly she had to grip the pen with her other hand to steady it. I signed my name swiftly, feeling a weight lifting with each stroke of the pen. And just like that, it was over. 7 years of marriage dissolved on a stack of paper. When we all stood, Emily looked at me one last time. I really am sorry, she whispered. Her voice was filled with a sorrow I'd once moved mountains to erase. Now, I just gave a curt nod, unable to trust myself to speak. Victor guided me out gently. I didn't look back. In the hallway, I let out a long exhale. It felt like I had been holding my breath for weeks. Victor gave me a tight smile and clasped my hand. It's a good result, Jack. You did the right thing. I know, I replied. The right thing? Maybe not in some moral abstract, but the necessary thing, absolutely. Within days, the final divorce decree was issued. True to our mediated terms, it cited irretrievable breakdown of the marriage without the ugly details, the The settlement agreement remained confidential. I got nearly everything. Emily got enough to possibly start over in a modest way, but nothing close to what she'd have gotten if she'd been faithful and by my side as we claimed that lottery win together. And most importantly, she was out of my life. She moved out of the house immediately, went to stay with a sister in Macon, I heard. Fine by me. I had no desire to see her or speak to her again. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, most of whom were firmly on my side after hearing a basic outline, nobody was surprised we divorced once word of her cheating got out. I learned that Emily was laying low. She wasn't showing up to social gatherings, and she took a leave from work. Shame can be a powerful prison. As for Kevin, I wasn't through with him either. Once my divorce was finalized, I made sure a certain package found its way to his wife, Lisa. In it, I included printed copies of a few choice emails and texts, enough to leave no doubt as to what her husband had been up to with mine. I didn't include a note or return address, but I knew she'd figure it out. She did. A week later, I got a single text from Lisa. We'd exchanged numbers long ago for some group event. "Thank you. I'm so sorry for what you went through. He's going to pay for this." True to her word, she filed for divorce immediately. Kevin's comfortable world collapsed almost overnight. He was kicked out of his home and found himself in his own legal hell as his furious wife took him to the cleaners. In their state, adultery can have legal consequences for distribution of assets too. And Lisa wasn't inclined to mercy. Last I heard, Kevin had moved into a dingy apartment alone, and several mutual friends had cut him off completely once they learned what he'd done. Good. He deserved every ounce of fallout. By the end of the summer, I found myself standing in an empty house. I decided to sell it. There were too many memories in those walls, and I didn't want the ghost of our past haunting me as I tried to move forward. On one of my last evenings there, I wandered through the rooms at dusk. In the living room, I could still picture Emily curled up on the couch reading or laughing with friends during a game night. In the kitchen, I saw flashes of us making dinner together, dancing to old songs. In the bedroom, well, even that held some good memories once, overshadowed now by the ugly finale. I didn't feel like those memories belonged to me anymore, like they were scenes from someone else's life. Perhaps they were. The man who had lived them was not the same man who stood here now. My phone buzzed, jolting me from my thoughts. A text from Mark. "Checking in. How are you?" I replied, "Divorced, free, and a whole lot richer. I'll be okay." It was the truth. The lottery money was safely in my accounts now, managed by a financial advisor. I had more money than I'd ever know what to do with. But the emotional cost of getting here had been steep. I stepped out onto the back porch where the evening sky was purple and gold. Taking a deep breath, I let the humid summer air fill my lungs. I was free. Free of lies, of betrayal, of the poisonous stress that had consumed me since that fateful day. Was I happy? Not exactly, not yet. The wound was still too fresh, but I was at peace with the decisions I'd made. Emily and Kevin didn't get to win. They faced the consequences of their actions and would carry the shame and losses for a long time. In a way, that was justice served. The serious, soft-spoken man I'd seen in the mirror lately, hardened by hurt and fueled by vengeance. He was someone I never thought I'd become. But perhaps he was exactly who I needed to be to survive this and ensure I wasn't taken advantage of. In time, I hoped I could let go of that anger and be the lighter version of myself again. As the first stars emerged, I gathered the last box of my belongings. I locked the front door and slid the house keys off my ring. Hers had already been surrendered. This was no longer our home, and soon it wouldn't be mine either. It was just a house now. I set the keys on the kitchen counter for the real estate agent and walked out without a backward glance. My new life awaited, untethered to this place of pain. In the driveway, I paused and looked up at the sky. I felt the slightest hint of a smile on my face. It was strange after all that had happened, but I realized I was smiling at the thought of tomorrow, because tomorrow was truly a new day, one I would greet on my own terms, without deceit or drama darkening my path. They say living well is the best revenge. I intended to put that to the test. I had a second chance, financially and personally, to build a life of my choosing, and I would do so with the hard-earned wisdom of this experience. I started the car, rolled down the windows and pulled away, leaving the house and the last remnants of that old life in the rearview mirror. My heart was still healing, yes, but it was unburdened. I was my own man again, and whatever lay ahead, I was ready.